Just for those folks who are joining us virtually, we will get started here in another 5 minutes.
Thank you.
We absolutely, Chair. We can start whenever you like.
Okay. Awesome. I'm saying that in the interest of time because we have we have some constraints today, so we want to be within the frame that we set. I think that we are waiting for Delegate Lopez to arrive. He said he's
That is
approaching, right?
That's correct, Chair.
So maybe we and Senator Favola and Delegate McClure and Hope are
We have Delegate Hope, Delegate McClure, and a representative supporting Delegate McClure is online, but we don't have Senator Flo.
her in person. Okay. That's fine. Let's get started. For the record, welcome to the May 19th, 2025 County Board work session, a briefing with the members of our Virginia General Assembly delegation. I'm Takis Karantonis. I'm the chair of the Arlington County Board, and I'm joined today by my colleagues, Vice Chair Matt Ferranti, members Susan Cunningham, Maureen Coffey, and Julius J.D. Spain, Sr. Ms. Coffey will be our moderator for the session today, so I will pass the floor to her once I conclude with his introductory remarks. We are joined also by leading Arlington County staff, Ryan Tohill, Director of Arlington Economic Development, and Anita Friedman, Director of the Department of Human Services. Both will be providing presentations on how the federal impacts and how the federal policies right now impact our community and their respective spheres of work, economic development and human services. We are also joined here to my left by Maria Meredith and Emily Hughes from the Department of Management and Finance, as well as the county manager, Mr. Swartz. And we have other various staff members in the wings joining us in case they are needed to provide additional information. Across from me, welcome Delegate Lopez, is Senator Ebin, 39th Senate District. Welcome Delegate Alfonso Lopez of the House District number 3. We have here also Senator Favola's Chief of Staff, Holly Hazard. Thank you for joining us today. Online, we have Delegate Patrick Hope with House District number 1, and Mr. Clerk, you told me a representative, but...
Yes, I'm online.
Yes.
Oh, Delegate Adele McClure with House District number 2. Senator Favola, I will say that she sends her regrets that she cannot be here. We wish her all the best for a swift and thorough recovery. The purpose of the meeting today is relatively simple, yet complex in the details. The recent federal actions and workforce reductions will result in real and ongoing negative economic impacts on our region and our county, not to mention the very personal and human consequences, the cascading effects of which we have just seen the beginning of them to impact our social safety net and our economy. We need our delegation to help address these emerging challenges and to advocate alongside with us to support our residents. So today we're joined by members of staff, as I mentioned before. We will have briefings on these challenges, at least on significant aspects of them. And we will make sure that we provide you with the information you need to assist you when you're advocating for our community at the state level. We also have a few recommendations for you to consider as you work with our colleagues in Richmond to respond to these ongoing challenges. And with that, I am very pleased to pass this along to our colleague, board member Maureen Coffey.
Thank you. And I just want to echo the thanks to our delegation and their representatives for being here today, taking time out of your busy schedules, and also bringing staff and having people look at the materials we sent ahead of time. We know that there's a lot going on, and I think it is a testament to the importance of this issue for Arlington and for our community to have everyone engaged in this conversation today. So our briefing is going to have two parts, two presentations, one for economic development, one for human services. Each part is a presentation from the department directors themselves, and is going to be followed by recommendations from the board on how we think that Richmond can help us address some of the challenges that our staff will outline. Both sections include plenty of time to ask questions of us, and we will have additional time at the end for questions that may not fit neatly in the categories of economic development and human services. So if you have other questions, we will make sure to make time for that. And at the end, we will also make sure to do a round of closing remarks. I think it's important, that we're all on the same team in this, and so we want to make sure that everyone gets what they need from this briefing to walk away and feel supported and ready to advocate on behalf of our community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Toohill from Arlington Economic Development to start with his presentation. And I will say also in your folders, if you're here in the room today, you have a copy of the slides as well as a two-page fact sheet with some data that our staff were able to pull together, as well as the one-pager with our recommendations that we will go over in more detail in just a little bit. So, Mr. Toohill, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. It's good to be with everybody tonight. And for those of you that don't know me, my name's Ryan Toohill. I've been with Arlington Economic Development for about 2.5 years. Previously worked with City of Alexandria, Economic Development, and the City of Alexandria in other roles. Thank you for your attention and interest in this discussion tonight. I'll start by saying, as you know, economic development is a team sport. We've been working hard on these issues, looking at this information, trying to develop our strategies and recommendations, but we've been doing that also on a regional basis with our colleagues across Northern Virginia and other parts of the region. And we've been in discussions with the leadership at VEDP as well about some of the things that we think the state could do to help us through this next year or so. So the first slide that we have in our presentation is just, we'll start with a kind of state and regional economic insights. First, yeah, perfect, thanks. So first, just on the Virginia outlook, we've been looking at the UVA Weldon Cooper Center April quarterly report, their Virginia outlook, and not surprising, they're saying that and projecting that the labor market is weakening. We're likely going to see contraction in the labor market in 2025, and they're currently projecting job losses on a statewide basis this year of 32,000 compared to last year. In addition, GDP growth is slowing. We're going to have modest positive growth of about 0.4% based on their projections, but this is all very highly sensitive to national and global issues that are taking place. Secondly, when Nova Chamber just did a survey of nearly 300 CEOs, executives, and business owners in Nova to kind of get their sentiment, and not surprisingly, that the outlook was pessimistic in terms of how the Nova economy is going to perform in the recent future. 59% indicated that they expect the Nova economy to decline. 1 in 5 are expecting to plan layoffs, and 63% cite federal cuts as a driving reason for the uncertainty. And that's really the key issue that we're facing, is uncertainty. As you all are seeing and reading as much as we are, every day something changes. It creates an uncertain business environment that makes it challenging for people and business owners to plan for the future and take action. And so anything we can do to help mitigate some of that uncertainty is certainly helpful. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about what we're seeing in Arlington. Here, we're going to talk to you a little bit about 4 categories, mainly driven by policies at the federal government, kind of what we're seeing today, and then below the line is where we where kind of areas of risk or concern are. So starting on jobs, unemployment is certainly up. We have over 1,000 Arlington residents who have filed for unemployment, and the unemployment rate has increased to 3.2%, which is 60% over last year's point in time. We know that this data doesn't tell the full story. We know that not everyone is filing for unemployment or can file for unemployment. We also know that a large number of people have taken the federal buyout packages, so they're kind of delaying their exit of work. So we expect these, we know that these numbers are not where reality is. But that's the number that we kind of have to use. In terms of the risk that we're facing, we estimate that there's about 87,000 federal and contractor jobs here in Arlington. And we put those at risk given the great uncertainty about what's going on both in the federal government with their employees, but also with the contracting base. And we'll talk a little bit more about federal contracting in a moment. Tourism is also an industry that, after bouncing back strongly and recovering from the COVID years, is now again feeling, we're seeing decline. Hotel occupancy is down by 8% in March and April of this year. Hotel bookings are down 3%. And when we have do our 60-day outlook into hotel occupancy, that's showing us down 23%. And that number does change based on kind of when we look at that, but we looked at that last week and we were down 23%. That is not, to say the least, great for our hotel owners. It's also not great for our economy here because visitors come and they spend money at hotels, they spend money in our restaurants and in our retail establishments. And so we expect to see secondary effects of those declines. And really that's being driven by a decrease in government and business travel, but also we're seeing a lot of cancellations from international travelers, especially tour groups, given some of the policies and statements coming out of Washington. In terms of real estate, we've had 193,000 square feet of federal office leases canceled. These were leases that were pretty much already canceled, so we were anticipating this. But overall, we have 5.3 million square feet of federal office space that is leased under GSA in Arlington. And so that is something we're watching very carefully. And in addition, our estimate is that of the top 10 contractors here in Arlington, they occupy almost another 2 million square feet. So we're continuing to monitor the real estate market. This is something that is of great concern to us because our office vacancy rate is at 24%. So about a quarter of our office space is vacant right now. And so adding to that number it does not help with our office valuations and the secondary effects of people not coming into Arlington to work every day. So we'll continue to monitor that. And then finally on federal contracting, $3.5 billion in federal contracts were performed in Arlington in fiscal year 24. 13.5. Yeah. Those contracts are held by over 950 businesses or nonprofits. We've had $5.2 billion terminated since January, impacting about 506 federal contracts total. So we are continuing to monitor this. This is somewhat of a mixed bag as well because some of these contracts, money had already been spent and provided to the business. They had performed the contract and the contract was canceled. In other cases, contracts were canceled outright and that's money that's not going to flow into the businesses. Flipping to the next slide, we wanted to share some potential revenue impacts based on some scenarios that we've been running through a third-party consultant study that Arlington is performing with the NOVA Economic Development Alliance member jurisdictions. I don't have to tell you that Northern Virginia's economy is certainly a driving, the engine of Virginia. 42% of our Virginia GDP comes out of Northern Virginia. So reductions to this it will certainly have ripple effects across the Commonwealth. In this scenario here, we projected a 10% reduction in force of federal workers, and that would lead to about 100,000 total job losses when you count in contractors, $14 billion of lost labor income, and $24 billion taken out of the economy. So what does this do? Well, on the revenue side, it would create a fiscal impact of nearly $3.5 billion in lost state and local tax revenue. So these are the types of scenarios that we're now running. In addition to 10%, we're doing higher level scenarios. But this is going to have a real impact on state and local revenue and then subsequently the services that we can provide. So I'll finish by just telling you a little bit about what we're doing to respond to this here at Arlington Economic Development. A couple of key things that we're working to do is continuing to attract business to Arlington. In spite of what you've heard tonight, there are still businesses that want to come here and open and expand and invest and create jobs here. And so we've been working through a number of initiatives through our business development team to attract international investment, to identify tech startups that are primed for high growth, and putting other things in place to grow our economic ecosystem here to make sure that we have the right things in place to help these businesses succeed. Tourism, our sales team continues to go out across the country and globe to attract visitors, and we're trying to figure out what other visitors might be able to come here that have decided maybe this isn't the year to come to Arlington. And so we're trying to get creative with our outreach. In addition to that, we're looking to take advantage of tourism improvement district policy that's allowed for in state code that would allow us to raise additional revenue to help with tourism advertising. Our small business team has been very, very active, both with working with existing small businesses through doing boot camps and pitch competitions, and is seeing great traction with lots of interest. And they've also reached out to do numerous workshops with current and former federal employees who are looking to transition to business. Technical assistance is something that we provide along with partner agencies, but we're also learning that several partner agencies who are funded through the federal government may not be around in the future, and so that's going to put a lot more burden on us to carry that weight. We've hosted workforce rehiring events and job expos, both with AED. We've also supported several. We have another one, I think Anita's going to talk about that in a minute, coming up this month at George Mason. And then finally, on the real estate front, we've been working for many years to update our land use regulations to allow owners and developers to more quickly reposition obsolete office buildings. And this is something that we've had very good success with. Just passing a policy, this board passed a policy last year for office conversions that's already resulted in three active projects with several others in the pipeline, which is huge for us to take 1 million square feet off of the market. And we'd like to talk to you about what we think would be some state programs that, if funded, could help us accelerate this, us and others across the Commonwealth with large office markets. With that, I'll hand it over to JD.
Yeah, thanks. We'll pass it to Mr. Spain for our recommendations once he gets the microphone on. Mr. Spain is the board's liaison to the Arlington Economic Development Commission, and so he's going to share the recommendations. So, great, Mr. Spain.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Coffey, for all your hard work in getting us to this point, and thank you to our delegation for being with us here today. So I want to turn your attention to the first page of our recommendations. You should have this handout, and you'll see 5 recommendations in the area of economic development that we would like for you to consider. And I am going to, as briefly as possible, read the elements of these 5 recommendations and then turn it over to you, our delegation, to ask any questions you may have. So the first you'll see is what we want to have is advocate for additional funding for the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. And this is so we can generate new business attraction, which is going to lead and help Northern Virginia attract new companies and new jobs. This, I will tell you, is in response to the potential risk of a regional, what we've been titled a brain dead, that could occur due to high levels of unemployment, high-skilled federal workers and contractors, and a tightening job market. On this slide, if you look at number 2, our second recommendation is to advocate. We would like for you to advocate for the creation of a statewide center for technology, R&D, research and development excellence that brings together higher education and private enterprise to fill the R&D funding and leadership vacuum. I will tell you that this will be critical because while Virginia is a national and global leader in tech research and development, the Commonwealth is increasingly competing with other states to invest in emerging technology, particularly in the context of the federal government, reducing its role in the global R&D. Our third recommendation is to work with the localities like you've done over the years to ensure and encourage office space repositioning and redevelopment. The federal government, as you've seen in some of our slides, leases approximately 12% of Arlington's county's total office supply. And decisions to relocate offices outside of the region could increase our already elevated vacancy rate that has been alarming and going up for many years. There's many helpful tools for localities that exist, but we recommend strengthening and fully funding these existing programs, such as the Urban Public-Private Partnership Redevelopment Fund and the statewide and local CPACE programs, and funding new programs that encourage the transformation of vacant office buildings. Fourth, the recommendation is to help us support entrepreneurship and new small business starts. And here is the number that I think is most important to remember. 1 in 5 Arlington residents are directly employed by the federal government. That includes my wife. Thousands of Arlingtonians also work as federal contractors. And thousands of small business employees across our region depend on patronage of our federal workers. As these residents explore potential career transitions, we ask that you, the delegation, support local small business programs like Arlington's highly acclaimed Biz Launch, increase funding for existing state programs that support entrepreneurs, and set aside funding to help small business owners access working capital in the form of grants and loans. And lastly, the fifth and last recommendation is to strengthen our tourism hospitality sectors. The current 6-month projections for Arlington show a 11% drop in hotel occupancy and a 10% drop in revenue, driven by declines in government meeting bookings and budget cuts, as well as significant international cancelizations attributed to visa. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I was saying, this 10% drop driven by declines in government meetings attributed to visa or safety concerns. So to mitigate these trends, we recommend advocating for additional funding to Northern Virginia destination marketing organizations to make the region more competitive when attracting new meeting and group business stays, and to fully leverage events in the nation's capital related to America's 250th anniversary. So with that, slide 8, and with that, I want to ask if you have any questions, your thoughts. We're going to go for about a few minutes. Yes, Senator Eben.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts. I mean, because I think the situation is dire with the federal government. And I noticed that a lot of your recommendations, which no doubt would all be valuable and helpful, say provide additional funding, fund the creation, fund new programs, provide funding, and provide additional funding. But I think the state's revenue is going to be down as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that our federal funds that we get for some important social service programs, which I guess is next on the agenda, may in fact be threatened as well. And I would hate to if we have, I don't know exactly which cuts are coming in federal level special ed or Meals for Children or SNAP or other things. If the state tries to backfill any of that, I don't know how much money we're going to have for our new programs. So I wanted to encourage you all to think creatively. Senator Favola was involved in a program which, it's a smaller initiative, but when we did this thing in the pandemic, that Cocktails to Go that we made permanent to help small businesses that were, ABC licensees, that when we did that didn't cost the state anything, didn't cost the county anything, and hopefully improved the economy. It's very small, but I'm wondering if there's I just want to encourage you all to think creatively, especially with economic development, on what could we do? I don't know if there are regulations or fees or something that would encourage pop-ups or encourage more tourism or would cut red tape in ways that would benefit the economy in Arlington and the state.
Well, thanks, Senator, for that question. I think we are going to, and thanks for that background, in a very innovative way, really explore a lot of those options that we've done in the past. But we also, at least I know, there's been a state surplus to a certain extent. So my question would also be, with some of that surplus money, where that may be going. I see Alfonso's ready to jump in.
Yeah, there's no surplus.
There's no surplus.
There's a surplus right now. We just passed the surplus. But we're coming back in September because of the cuts that are happening at the federal level. Right? With the reconciliation package, the congressional reconciliation package, as it stands right now, you're looking at significant cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans benefits. All right? And so the idea of what that means is that we are going to have to come back in September and probably redo what was an outstanding budget. All right? That had the surplus. But the idea somehow that there is a surplus that we can rely upon to fund these programs is fanciful. All right? Because what we're going to be dealing with is, how do you actually address the gaping hole that's going to be created by Medicaid? All right? If we actually hit the trigger and are not able to fund the health care for 750,000 people in Virginia, we don't have the funds at the state level to fully backfill that. The same holds true with Medicare. The same holds true with the tens of millions of dollars that we're not getting that we're planning on getting for education funding. And so Virginia's in a better position than most. But the idea somehow that we have a vault of significant amounts of funds available because we have a surplus right now, relative to where we will be in several months after these chaotic cuts and effects to our regional economy continue, don't rely on that. All right? Right now, the Council of Governments says that with the 10% cut, you're going to look at 9.6% unemployment just in the 8th Congressional District. 9.6% unemployment. And so the cascading impacts of that on significant purchases, on business development, on housing, on people buying homes, on people making improvements to their homes is significant. And so what we're trying to get with the emergency committees that we have and the work that we're doing right now is to get in the weeds on where the specific impacts are going to be. And right now it's as if it's this huge self-made harm that is now creating this chaos. And we all get it, but, honestly, you've got the right folks up here on finance and appropriations. I'm more than happy to help the county develop some of these ideas in terms of creating some of these funds and putting in the legislation and then working with Adam, who's a senior member of Finance and Appropriations on the Senate side, to get them funded. But we need to be realistic about where the priorities are going to have to be in terms of the social safety net programs that are going to be hurt right now. And they are going to be hurt.
I just would add, I think one thing that's important is that this is a menu of recommendations, and we are very understanding that we're not going to get 100% or probably 90% or whatever the threshold is of these recommendations funded, but we really want to put in front of you things that we think can address the more structural issues, because in the long term, if these cuts are for 4 years, if they're for longer, we need to have a way to regenerate revenue for Virginia and for Arlington to replace and backfill some of those funds that can go to social services. And so I think really addressing the economic development side of this isn't, it may not be the urgent frontline response, but it's some of the things that we need to be thinking about long term so that structurally we're in a sound foundational place to continue the work it is that we all want to do to serve the very vulnerable people who are going to be left behind by these cuts.
If I could say that's well put, I would just encourage, among this menu of options, to kind of think about what would give us the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say to think of things that don't cost money that make money, and that's not always possible. But
come up with some.
But I
for you.
appreciate that.
Yeah. And we have Delegate Hope online with his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I can't disagree with anything my colleague said, but I do think, to your point, Ms. Coffey, the argument that we're trying to mitigate the damage here, I think is something that we should lead with. The options that you put on the table all sound very promising. I'm wondering if you've had discussions with, as a region, if we could make these requests as a region, because those that are being impacted, certainly Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, are ground zero. And so all of these ideas would benefit the region. That's one point I want to make. The second one is, I know for years we've tried to restore and have restored Arlington's ability to increase the transient occupancy tax. I'm wondering, do you have enough runway there to increase that? I think the economic development presentation was a good one to discuss promoting Arlington tourism. That's one mechanism that you can use, and to the extent that you have the authority to increase that tax, might be helpful.
Yeah, I can take the second question first there. Our finance staff confirmed that we are at the max allowable transient occupancy tax rate at this point. I think, down the line and maybe in a different venue, we can talk a little bit about the work being done on a potential tourism district. And, we are really deeply investing in bringing that in, but at this point we're maxed out on TOT. In terms of coordinating with our region, Mr. Tuhel is very engaged in the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance and having a lot of conversations there. Our chair has been engaging in those conversations from the COG and Northern Virginia Regional Commission, and I think we're all sitting down with our colleagues across the region to have these conversations on a pretty regular basis. So I think a coordinated strategy is definitely a good idea. I also think getting 20-something electeds in a room to agree on one thing that may not be exactly their thing is always a challenge. So we're happy to think about it.
To follow up on Delegate Hope's question, can you just clarify for me what your current TOT tax, transient occupancy tax is, and do we know what Alexandria's and Fairfax's is? I mean, are you seeking more authorization or no? Not at this.
I'm happy to pass that to Miss Maria Meredith or Emily Hughes.
Ms. Hughes just knows.
Ms. Hughes is pulling that up.
I do have the regional information. I just have to pull it up. Hold on.
Okay.
And I see Ms. McClure has her hand up, so we'll go there and then we'll come back for the answer to Mr. Evans' question.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to echo the appreciation for having this menu of options for us to keep in the back of our mind as we kind of march into September. As it was mentioned, we have these emergency committees that the House side just met last week on the rural impacts of the federal cuts and the workforce reduction. And so when we come in September, right at this moment, we won't know, as it was mentioned, what will be working with until that work is complete within the emergency committee. So it is good for us as a delegation to have your priorities, to have your ideas and long-term recommendations in the back of our minds as we kind of march toward that decision making. And then the other question that I had was actually asked by Delegate Hope about the regional conversation. I know specifically on the point about education and innovation, just wondering if there has been some conversation among the universities and the colleges that reside in Northern Virginia and how they can kind of get involved in that piece particularly. So I just wanted to know about the conversation, but you kind of already hit on with your response the question that Delegate Hope had.
I can just shortly, we have been talking to our universities here and to the Northern Virginia Community College. Everybody sees the opportunity right now to be a place where retooling and reskilling, et cetera, happens. But they are facing two challenges. First of all, they need to pivot, so there is a lag. And number two, they need to know to what to pivot and what workforce they will have to deal with, which there is a lag there too, because we don't know that. That the problem here is that events are extremely fast. They are, very precipitous. This is not a normal economic crisis. This is an imposed economic crisis. And the third thing is that they're losing funding. They're losing funding in other places for their other programs. So there is a compounded effect of these. But we are literally focusing on that, and the committee will be hearing from the university separately and from us as well in this conjunction. Yes.
I was going to see if we got those numbers yet.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Hughes, if you want to share on TOT.
Yeah, so Arlington County's TOT tax rate is 5.25%. The 1/4% is dedicated to travel and tourism promotion. The city of Alexandria is 6.5% plus a $1.25 per night per room. And Fairfax County is at 6%.
We should also say that what we see is significantly less tourism per se. I mean, there are less people visiting. Federal travel is down. International travel is down. Yeah.
All right. I hesitate to cut us off, but we do have another extremely important topic, and we'll have some more time for open subject questions down the line.
Yeah, just one thing for your staff. If you can get us some specifics about the small business support programs, and specifically what those programs are and how much money you would want, or what you specifically would want to see accomplished with those programs.
All right, Mr. Toohill has homework. I will go ahead and bring up Miss Anita Friedman, the director of our Department of Human Services. Thank you very much. And we will pass it over to her to give the second presentation of the day.
Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. And I'm going to be presenting on the local impact of the projected federal funding cuts. Let's see, we have to move on a moment there from that slide. It's interesting to hear this discussion because it really is a cyclical issue, Economic growth is what spurs our tax base. Our tax base is what provides the extremely significant amount of local funding for human services, which is pretty much almost 80% of our budget. And without those human services, our workforce, our local workforce will really be impacted greatly. So in our Department of Human Services, which is actually, and thanks to the long legacy of some of the delegation members also in Arlington, we have a very significant amount of money going into human services. However, $42.3 million of that comes through the form of federal or state grants. And in our department, we are a braided institution. We're not a siloed institution. We're integrated. So we have partial funding for many different positions. As many as 269 of our staff across 27 programs would be impacted by the loss of this funding. That's 30% of the department's workforce. And we serve about 55,000 duplicated clients because many clients, as you know, have multiple services. And the funding also extends to a number of our nonprofit partners, 40 of them. And I'm going to go into the details on the specifics of the housing, the food, and the healthcare and how that would be impacted so you can see. So you probably know that we have we have more than 24 million. I think we're up to $29 million of funding for our Housing Choice Voucher Program, which now has 1,535 households. Our wait list is 5,000 people. When we opened it a few years ago, 19,000 people applied in 1 week. We have 5,000 on the wait list. And we also have permanent supportive housing that's funded through HUD. Because we know for a long time this has been stagnant, the county has been able to very robustly provide money for housing grants, which is the only jurisdiction in the entire state of Virginia that provides a fully locally funded subsidy program, and now has reached as many households as there are in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So we're up to 1,568. That's a 31% increase since 2019, so we're looking at the last 5 years, and the program budget has increased by 66%. So where is the county manager going to find all that money? And where will people go? This is the question. This is a very serious question. Our homeless shelters are full. Our point-in-time count this year, which actually we had 2 county board members with us, went up by 12%. So, and you know, the tolerance for your constituency of seeing people under bridges and families living in cars is not very high in Arlington. Also, we have folks like Path Forward, Bridges to Independence, you know, our very close partners who work with us from the nonprofit sector. They are receiving about $3.4 million in federal funding. Next slide. Then we have the issue of what you were just alluding to, Medicaid. We expanded Medicaid. Of course, we know if there's the rule that goes into effect, if the federal funding dips below 90%, the trigger will take place to throw people off of the Medicaid rolls. Back in the, you can see here, when Medicaid expanded, it basically, we served another 11,000 individuals on Medicaid. So we have close to 30,000 people now on Medicaid, and we have $11.8 million going to other kinds of health and human services programs. So that's everything from SAMHSA, you know, so and immunizations would be impacted, family planning, a lot of our opioid services, crisis services, our first episode psychosis that we just put together. I mean, it's going to be widespread damage. And then we have neighborhood health. Thankfully, free clinic is 100% locally funded, but neighborhood health is a HRSA. What happens when the federally qualified health centers are no longer funded? So we can't do this alone. I think that's what we're trying to make the point here. We need support, however it comes. Food security is another gigantic issue. Of course, we have SNAP, which has been going up, and we think, oh, great, SNAP is now over 5,000 households. And WIC is also increased by 41%. During COVID, we saw record numbers of people signing up for WIC. And food has gone up 20%. And AFAC has now over 50,000 visits in the quarter. So it's staggering. The numbers are staggering, and it's very concerning. And we continue to, you know, have a generous board, a generous county manager who's trying to support this. But we will have really significant issues should all these changes occur. Unemployment was mentioned by Ryan Toohill, but we are working diligently to provide federal worker job fairs. There's one coming up at George Mason on May 28th at the Mason Square. And we have a very frightened immigrant population. You know, we pride ourselves on our diversity. 1 out of 5 Arlingtonians is an immigrant. And people don't want to leave their homes, right? We've had ICE already make several detentions. So these are big concerns on the forefront of our minds. And last but not least, childcare, which I know some of you are champions of, are the highest cost in the nation, pretty much. Some of the most expensive. We extensively use the subsidies. We're oversubscribed with the state subsidies. And if those should go away, we'll have a lot of people who will be impacted, young children. So this is basically the scenario. I know Ms. Coffey is going to present the recommendations. They will involve probably funding. I did hear, though, that there was $900 million that was set aside by Governor Youngkin. I don't know what the purpose is, but.
Could you speak?
And when they change and they make the requirements, there was the COVID bump, where remember everyone who applied, they got the maximum benefit for families for the amount of SNAP. When COVID ended, it went back to the pre-COVID rates. So if you're a senior, you're probably getting $23 a month living on SSI. And so people go to AFAC to supplement, and we have people now who are really never been to AFAC before because they're going to spend their money first on rent and not on food.
Right.
So the food comes up short.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Friedman. I think, that is a very, very fast overview of our level of risk exposure on our human services side. But I'd like to pass it to Ms. Cunningham to present our human services recommendations.
I think Ms. Friedman did a great job, and I'd like to leave as much room as possible for questions and conversation. I know each of you are deeply passionate about human services needs and know this community well. I think you see clearly in those recommendations how the cascading happens, right? So if our local housing commitments are not stabilized, then that rolls into community-based organizations not being able to perform, and then that rolls into evictions, whether it's rental or, in this case, home ownership and middle income, which is a new pickle for us, and then on down the road. And how do we stay and stabilize so that we do have. We are definitely economizing on batteries already and cutting it really close. So I think you're familiar with all of the issues, and I think the same question you posed of, what can be funded and what can be innovation and collaboration. I think we need both, and we would like you to keep in mind that as one of the major engines of this Commonwealth for a very long time, we have given and we sometimes need to be supported as well. And unlike in COVID, where everyone had a similar impact, Tidewater and Northern Virginia have a disproportionate impact and a very fast impact here, and one that it's not clear exactly when the lift will come at the end. And so as much as we are proud of the fact that we've been able to give and to support and to nourish the Commonwealth, this is a time when we need the Commonwealth to support us, and we will bring all of our minds and all of our energy and all of our local talent and what treasure we have left to support that, but we need your help. And so we're here to hear what you need and to innovate with you, and I'll just give you the floor.
Yeah, we're happy to open up. I mean, I can highlight the different recommendations, or we can just jump right into questions, but
Yeah, I think Anita went through them quickly. You know, local housing stabilization. I think the stabilization funds that were done during COVID across the Commonwealth, we need something like that, both for our mortgage holders and for our renters. And we will not have the local funds to do that on our own. So I know that's a stabilization fund potentially tap. And then in terms of community-based organizations, you know, again, stabilization funding for those who are trying to hold people in place to support our safety net. Also, I think some support around philanthropy could be helpful in sort of encouraging those across the Commonwealth that are able to accelerate some philanthropic support. That might be a way to help even that out. Then the third one was eviction detection. Prevention and diversion, just as we have done in COVID. We see the need is rising. Virginia Works is the talent pool. We talked a little bit about that on the economic side. And then in terms of strategic use of state reserves, this is really trying to stabilize the unemployment, particularly in the small business sector, but also in the nonprofit sector. I think you're quite familiar with that need. And then finally, childcare. You know, I think there are people in this room who wrote the book on childcare, so you know that the need is continues, and that's not just small children childcare, it's before care and after care as well, to ensure not just that families can work, but also that our kids are getting the support, particularly our English language learners are getting the support they need to be part of that workforce going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. I think I saw Delegate Hope had a hand up just a moment ago.
Well, yeah, Ms. Cunningham just read my mind. I was asking about evictions, and it sounds like there's a proposal there. It looks like we have a blueprint for that during COVID. We amended the landlord-tenant law to be more supportive, keep a fund so that people could get out of their leases without penalty, support for mortgages and things like that. So it sounds like we probably need to revert back to that blueprint. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. McClure.
Yeah, so I helped to craft that blueprint during COVID for the eviction prevention. And part of the problem is that a lot of the funding that we received was federal for that pot of money. And so we're just going to have to get innovative to bring that back and find a way to fund that, which is extremely important. I know we put some more money in our eviction prevention program that we have on the state level, but it's not quite, enough for the impact that we're going to be feeling. So we're going to have to reevaluate that probably come September. So all of the recommendations that you presented are definitely on our radar, definitely something that we're thinking of and prioritizing. It's top of mind. It's really helpful to see the local impact in all of the numbers, so I appreciate the data. So I just have a specific question for Anita. And Anita, I really appreciate your presentation. Just wanted to know how the federal workforce reduction, specifically at HUD, has impacted, grant administration and kind of capacity building there for you all.
So far, we have not been denied, I think, any drawdowns from HUD to date. Of course, we've gotten, sort of direction from various, not HUD specifically, I think, but from various federal agencies about what we should be doing or not doing with regard to DEI. But our eviction cases are going up. And so, in this case, without an eviction moratorium, as we had in COVID, I really don't know what will happen, because we're seeing, I think, every month around 300 to 400 people being evicted.
Yeah. And I would add a little bit related. I know I've heard from some of our nonprofit partners that they've had challenges getting in touch with program officers or others, maybe not necessarily at HUD, but HHS and others, where, people who were previously very reliably communicative are now kind of MIA. And I think even though they're not, like Ms. Friedman said, they're still drawing down on grants, there's an anxiety there about what does it mean if we're not hearing back.
I did hear that they're reducing the number of offices. I think our regional office will now be Atlanta.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, Delegate Lopez.
So considering the fact that 1 in 5 residents of Arlington are immigrants, and you have have a sizable undocumented population or a population that's in the process of becoming naturalized, and considering the fear that was referenced before, what are the specific situations or you're seeing with the immigrant population of Arlington in their accessing of services? Do you see a downturn? Do you see can you speak to some of what's happening right now?
Do you want to respond, Mr. Carnton? Okay. Well, yes, we are seeing people who don't want to come to our department. We have transferred some of our services to community centers, so people will feel more comfortable. I think there's also some evidence of attendance decline among immigrant families. And, a lot has been done by the board to further the trust and to, rewrite a little bit the trust policy. But you can't really address the fear completely because it's being propagated every day through the media, so I don't know, Dr.
Mr. DiFronte,
Karantanis, if you want to.
There are two effects that are very concerning. So number one is, of course, fear rules right now. So people don't access the labor market anymore, especially the season now when construction, etc., and all other sectors. The second is they don't access timely services. And then they begin to budget differently. So, for example, if they don't know what happens next month, are they going to pay the rent right now? They will delay this decision and they will keep the cash for now and so forth. So this creates a cascade of effects. So there are immigrant households that are more likely to be in eviction protection territory without having to be there. And so we are constantly chasing behind a snowballing fiscal problem here that is enlarged as we go, without certainty, without legal protections, without due process, without all these things. There is a very real financial footprint of this that wouldn't be needed. Yeah. And so forth. Just to Delegate McClure's and Delegate Hope's comments, eviction prevention is the most expensive housing program we can put in. Housing grants, for example, supporting households as we go is the rational measured policy that keeps households in place, that allow them to access the labor market, make them keep the workforce here in the community and keep the workforce productive. We don't want to be in this territory, and this is now imposed on us.
We did hear last week, remember, at the we had a Latino roundtable, all the nonprofit leaders and community advocates. Apparently there are this quite active Facebook sales group where people are selling the contents of their homes in order to garner as much funding or working towards self-deportation, which also costs money because people have to buy their passports and renew everything. So
I think we're also seeing kind of delays in accessing healthcare, whether it's an emergency where you're afraid to call 911 or an appointment that you miss because you're afraid that you may put your family at risk or may put your neighbor at risk. So that's also a cascading effect. And then for our immigrant community, but also our whole community who has empathy and care for our neighbors, the mental health load is pretty significant between the fear for will people be okay in the immigrant community and will financial woes get settled out. I think Ms. Friedman's drawing our attention. Don't leave the table. We need you here.
Yeah.
Indicators and some of the services that are typically for people in very dire situations.
Yeah, so you can see that increasing, and then obviously that's a lagging indicator, and again, cascades particularly to the young and the old in our community who may then not have community members there for them.
But I think I'll just jump in and say, it's we've taken two actions. We did the initial work with the Arlington Community Foundation of $250,000, a legal representation, and then we subsequently this past Saturday changed our policy with respect to, because due process is not being respected regularly. So we took those two steps. I do think on the financial side of it, really it's the county manager who framed it this way. COVID was immediate economic crisis right then. This is the reverse. We don't see huge budget impacts today. And we don't, the first two times we talked to Arlington Public Schools, we didn't see huge drops in attendance. But Anita's, she's more dialed into the daily and the weekly numbers. And so we're going to see cascading changes. What we have done is set aside, and I think this is known, but I think it's important big picture, $11.5 million to address some of these challenges. Just as you correctly referred to the $5 billion in the state as ephemeral, the $11.5 million is also going to be not enough if all of the challenges and all the cuts that the federal that go through Congress. And so, with respect to immigration, we've all been thinking about what's next to address the human impacts of some of the press we've seen on, for families. But I think it's just a touch before we've had a chance to develop the systemic look for how to address it, because there's food, there's housing, et cetera. So that's the start of an answer. We know we have to do more to address our immigrant households and families. We also have all these other needs that are there, and we're trying to evaluate them soon, but not so soon that we misdiagnose the scale of the problem over the next 6 months.
And I appreciate Ms. Friedman bringing up the handout that we have that I believe our folks joining online should have received in virtual format already. A number of these are indicators that we will be monitoring as ongoing as possible. Not everything is updated on a monthly basis, some of it's quarterly, but we're using these really as early indicators because we know even what we know today is kind of too soon to really understand what the trend is, what the real impact is, whether it's unemployment, food security services, mental health services. We're still kind of before the cliff right now. We know that there's a number of people who do have assets who are able to get through maybe 3 months, but is it at 4 months where they really are gonna need that social safety net support? Maybe it's 6 months later that they need that social safety net support. We don't know when it's coming, but we're seeing that slow tick up. And so part of the reason that we pulled together a lot of these data and statistics is that we're going to be monitoring them on an ongoing basis so that as that trend does evolve, we can try and see it as early as possible and not be behind the curve. I think that's really the message of today, right? Is that we all want to get ahead of what we know is going to be coming down the line, even if we don't know the magnitude just yet, even if we don't know, that it's coming in December or January or July, we want to be sure that we are ready. And so we did, I think have a pretty fiscally responsible budget in terms of adding an additional $11 million to our existing stabilization reserve. I know that, the state also has a rainy day fund just like we do. And so, but those are one-time dollars, which is kind of the interaction, right, between the economic development side and the human services side, making sure that there's something coming into that fund and not just coming out of that fund, because they're one-time dollars that once they're spent, they're gone. Delegate Lopez. Oh.
We're getting close to the end, I believe, right?
We're going to have to be. I know we started a little bit late.
Yeah, I know my period kind of was short, but I'll just close with this. And thank you, Delegate Lopez, for your remarks. I totally got where you're coming from. The human factor, and I know our chair talks about this a lot in our catch-all programs because, this is all about people. We're in the people business. But I will align my thoughts with my colleague, Ms. Cunningham, in so many ways. In my nearly 40 days here, I've been told and understand that Arlington and our government, our economy, is a strong pillar of the Commonwealth. And when you're talking about the second highest GDP and bringing in $41 billion, understanding all that's going on right now, all we're asking for, and I think for folks who are looking on today, is what is our delegation going to do when they reconvene? What is the big ask? And Delegate Lopez, I appreciate what you stated about working with some of these programs with small businesses, and I'll follow up with Maureen and see what we can do with the session. 'Cause I think we need to remind our businesses and our folks that we're not going to leave them at the wayside, even in these hard times. And it's going to be like this for a while, I believe. Thank you very much.
All right. I think we'll give maybe a couple minutes if you have other topics of questions that you wanted to get to. Otherwise, we can just skip to conclusions. But I know we are over time, and at least one board member actually has to skedaddle for an in-person engagement. So, and given we've done a lot of talking, so I think I'll just hand it straight over to our General Assembly delegation, Delegate Lopez.
I'm very appreciative of all this information, and also with the federal impacts, considering the fact that Arlington has one of the highest concentration of federal employees by percentage in the entire Commonwealth and entire country. These chaotic actions across the river are affecting us disproportionately. And so I do appreciate this. Please understand that I think I speak for everyone in the delegation want to be active partners with you and the county board and all of your staff to find ways to make things easier for folks. And as things develop, as we figure out what the real impacts are going to be over time, how we can use our revenue as effectively as possible to assist this vitally important section of the Commonwealth, considering the fact that, as was stated, I mean, for generations for every dollar we get back, we pay $1.37 for the rest of the Commonwealth. And so maybe now is the time for the rest of the Commonwealth to understand that we need to be helped as well.
Thank you. Senator Evans, you want to?
I just want to thank you for all the information, and I appreciate.
No,
Oh, now I'm on. Okay. Anyway, I appreciate very much the tracking that your social services is doing with this dashboard, so we can monitor how things are progressing or if they're getting worse and how. But just to encourage, with what you want us to bring forward, the programs that you think will give you the most bang for the buck. And the other thing I wanted to mention was job retraining. I'm curious if Mr. Toohill and I could get together offline, but I'm assuming that you're working with the community colleges and others. I toured a company at National Airport yesterday that does aircraft maintenance that's based in Arlington and was talking about opportunities and how some of their employees are aging out towards retirement and how they have great opportunities for veterans and working with the community colleges to get people engaged for those that might want to have a career in aircraft maintenance. Or, while we know we've always had a nursing shortage, I'm curious what the displaced federal workers might be perhaps best suited for. Maybe, there's a match with some of the technology opportunities or otherwise, and keep us posted if there's more that we need to help facilitate in that regard.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Delegate Hope or Delegate McClure, I know you might want to give some concluding statements.
I would just echo thanks for having this forum. I took a ton of notes. Please continue to update this document for us so that we can see the trends that are developing. If there is a special session, it'll be probably late summer, as mentioned, or early fall. And so we need to make sure that we have all the right information. I just wanted to emphasize a point I made earlier. I do think because this is a regional impact, it would be very helpful. I know that committee is looking for solutions that will fit regionally. If we can, to the extent that we can get on the same page on these types of things, I think it'll be really helpful because the solutions are going to be budgetary, but some of them are going to be legislatively as well too. And they could have sunsets and temporary timelines. But all this is really helpful information, and know that our delegation really works well together and will continue to work towards something that can help mitigate the damage that's being caused unnecessarily.
Thank you. Delegate McClure, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Absolutely. So I echo my colleagues in saying that I truly appreciate the dialogue and the data, and just also want to emphasize what Delegate Hope said, and the fact that bringing together the region and actually submitting proposals and recommendations as a region would be really, really strong. Especially because we know, as it was mentioned, we are disproportionately impacted, not just within Virginia, but within the country. And so as we head into a special session, probably within the early fall, it would be great to have just a strengthened regional response in terms of what our top priorities and recommendations are. And then also just wanted to emphasize what was said earlier about the human impact. There's going to be far-reaching impacts on all different sectors of our economy, and also on people in general. But I really, really worry about the impact on the development of our children. With a lot of what will be disappearing, and a lot of the evictions that folks are going to be facing, and the decrease in services. So that's definitely top of mind for me, but we are constantly monitoring the situation, as I know you all are. So please continue to keep in conversation with us and keep in touch, and we'll do the same as we start thinking about what kind of actions we need to take in response to these federal cuts and reductions that are cascading down from Washington.
Thank you. And Senator Eben has asked.
Yeah, just a point that in addition to the House Special Committee that's already had several meetings, including one over at the Tech Campus in Alexandria, tomorrow the Senate Finance Committee will be meeting at Northern Virginia Community College in Alexandria, and there's a subcommittee particularly dealing with federal actions that'll be meeting, I believe, at 9:30 tomorrow morning at Northern Virginia Community College. And I'm going to take a set of these materials and make sure the finance staff has them.
The timing of that may have informed the timing of our request to have you here today, but
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. We will wrap up there, but really this is intended to be the start of a conversation. We all represent the same community, and we are in this together, and so we want to be partners. And we know that we have access to information that you may not have. You have access to information we may not have. And so making sure that those lines of communication are open. Any follow-up questions, anything else you have for us, we would love to hear. And we are always happy to get together at any time in the future. This is going to be a long haul commitment for all of us to get through this. And so we just really thank you for your partnership and your participation today.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll pass this back to our chair, Mr. Karantonis.
To add thanks, I cannot help to tell you that I feel all this indiscriminate layoffs, programs, etc. This is action that is a choice. It's not compelled by any real circumstances whatsoever. So what I cannot help to reiterate, there is a huge political gorilla in the room that is somebody in the governor's mansions, preferably, has to pick up the phone and call the White House and tell them to stop. The most helpful action right now is defining clearly, and from the entire Commonwealth, and if possible also in a bipartisan way, hopefully, that this is unnecessary, devastating to the Commonwealth to begin with, to everybody else. So I cannot frame it in a different way. This is how it is. And I'm very sorry that until now the governor seems to have a very cavalier attitude to this. And this is, right? Yeah. Yeah. So one other thing that I want to say is that we talk about the lagging indicators, etc. Make no mistake, food insecurity is the canary in the coal mine. When the food insecurity raises so strong, there are so many things that are going wrong right now, as of yesterday, that we will find compounding effects later if we delay. There is one attitude sometimes that I feel, even with regional neighbors, etc. Well, wait and see. Let's see how it plays out, etc. No, we have to be stimulating the local economy, and that's also true for the Tidewater. That's true for us. We have to be thinking proactively in stimulating that today rather than running behind tomorrow, because here. We don't have so many possibilities to pivot so easily. We are losing the creme of the creme, the top workforce here. These are not people who I can send tomorrow to the community college to be retooled or to be reskilled, etc. If they go from Virginia, not only from Arlington or from Northern Virginia. They go from the Commonwealth. It's a loss of bone, of muscle, of tissue, economic tissue that the entire Commonwealth will very much regret not to having stamped timely. So this is how I go about that. It's really the highest alert that I have ever seen, because of how deliberate the impact is. So that's for that. I know that we will be further in contact, and we will be working towards the best way to protect our community.
Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned.